Okay, let's unpack this. Silicon chips have, truly changed the world. They're in everything, right? Your phone, your car. But here's something kind of surprising from our source material today. Taiwan, the place where many of these absolutely critical chips are made, well, it has a really unique and, well, you could argue uncertain legal status under international law. One perspective we found in our source even describes Taiwan as potentially still under U.S. military occupation since World War II.
Yeah, it's fascinating. And what's interesting here is how that really deep, complex, fundamental question about Taiwan's legal identity, it sort of surfaces in unexpected places. Our mission in this deep dive is to explore exactly that using a specific lens provided by our source, a letter sent by the global powerhouse TSMC to the U.S. Department of Commerce.
Right. So we're diving into this tension. On one hand, you've got a major corporation pushing back pretty hard, actually, against proposed U.S. tariffs on things needed to make chips. And on the other, how our source connects that, well, seemingly straightforward economic issue to the much bigger fundamental question. What is Taiwan's legal status, really, on the world stage? It's quite a link.
It really is. And the source first zeroes in on TSMC's very direct position. The U.S. government was looking into tariffs on imported semiconductor manufacturing equipment materials, and TSMC's response was, well, pretty unequivocal.
Yeah, they certainly didn't mince words, did they? Their letter warned, this is a quote, that these proposed tariffs would suppress demand and negatively impact our Arizona investment. They argued pretty clearly that most of the essential tools, the materials you need for advanced chip production, you just can't get them domestically within the United States.
And the source actually details the economic impact they cited. These tariffs, based on some industry estimates mentioned, would directly increase construction costs. It's about roughly a 0.64% increase for every 1% tariff hike. Now that drives up overall project costs, could cause significant delays, and maybe even impact the feasibility of their big U.S. expansion plans, like that facility in Arizona.
And it wasn't just TSMC feeling this way. According to the source, major U.S. tech companies' names you definitely know, like Intel, AMD, Micron, Texas Instruments, they also voiced strong opposition. Their argument was that taxing these crucial imports would actually harm U.S. manufacturing, stifle innovation, and be detrimental to national security and economic growth.
That really highlights this intersection, doesn't it? Economic protection versus national security concerns. But TSMC wasn't just, complaining. The source shows they offered alternatives. They strongly advocated for tax credits as maybe a more effective way to incentivize U.S. manufacturing rather than punitive tariffs.
Right. They specifically asked for tariff exemptions for companies making big investments in the U.S., like, their Arizona subsidiary. And they pushed for what they called continuous tariff exemption for those inputs that, genuinely aren't available from domestic suppliers.
Yeah, and their core argument, as it's presented in the source, kind of connected back to the bigger picture. Economics, yes, but also supply chain stability. They reasoned that if tariffs cut demand for chips, it hurts their really important entities. You have customers think Apple, AMD, NVIDIA, Qualcomm, and ultimately that weakens the security and reliability of the whole global supply chain for advanced tech, which, that is a national security issue.
Okay, so that covers the business case against tariffs. Pretty clear. But here's where things get truly surprising, I think. The source reveals this much deeper legal dimension that's potentially at play. It brings in the perspective of the Taiwan civil government, or TCG, and it connects TSMC's economic plea directly to this fundamental uncertainty about Taiwan's legal status.
Exactly. The TCG's claim, as described in the source, is that Taiwan is, legally speaking, an occupied territory under U.S. military government. They trace this all the way back to the post-World War II period and the 1951 Treaty of San Francisco. That's where Japan formally gave up all rights to Taiwan, but crucially didn't transfer sovereignty to any specific entity, so its status was left, unsettled under international law.
And the source then presents the TCG's argument that under the U.S. Constitution, Taiwan actually fits the concept of an unincorporated territory. Is that right? They cite that historic 1901 Supreme Court case, Downs v. Bidwell, which defined these territories as sort of belonging to the U.S. but not fully integrated into the mainland, a bit like Puerto Rico or Guam.
That's the argument presented, yes. According to the source, the TCG view is that the current government in Taiwan, the ROC, isn't actually sovereign. It functions more like an administrative entity under this U.S. military government structure. The source also mentions Taiwan's separate customs territory status, Chinese Taipei, in the WTO as something the TCG sees as further evidence supporting Taiwan's non-foreign relationship with the U.S. at least when it comes to trade.
So what's really striking here is how TSMC's economic goal, getting that tariff exemption and the TCG's legal argument about status, they both kind of point towards the same idea, the idea that trade with Taiwan should be treated differently, specifically with zero tariffs from the U.S. side. TSMC wants it for, business reasons, investment protection.
And the TCG argues that if Taiwan is legally a region under U.S. administration, then trade shouldn't be taxed by the U.S. at all, just like trade with other U.S. territories isn't. The source really emphasizes this shared conclusion. If Taiwan legally holds this special status under U.S. jurisdiction, then taxing trade with it as if it were just any foreign country, that doesn't quite align with occupation law principles or the implications of the San Francisco Treaty, or even U.S. customs law regarding its own territories.
So this deep dive really shows us, doesn't it, that this whole debate over semiconductor tariffs, it's much more than just a dry discussion about trade costs or, supply chains.
Absolutely. It touches on these really fundamental questions of fairness, international recognition, and how an uncertain legal identity, as explored in our source material, how that has very real-world implications for policy, for business, and even for, perceived justice. It's like a deeper message hidden inside a corporate letter.
Yeah, exactly. So it leaves you wondering, what does it truly mean when the intricate world of international law and history intersects so directly with global economics, and the production of something as critical as microchips, especially in a place with such a complex status as Taiwan, makes you think, doesn't it?
Whether it's coming from the economic angle or the legal status angle, it represents something deeper, a desire for fairness, for respect, maybe even a recognition.
Really fascinating stuff pulled from the material today. Thanks for walking us through it.
My pleasure. Always interesting.
Thank you for listening. We hope you'll join us next time.